I think my son is seeing the man that died on our property. My son tells me creepy stories all the time. He'll tell me that he met a boy playing at our house, built in early 1800s, alone with a name I've never heard that fell in with the pigs. We don't have pigs, but the farm did at some point. And he got really hurt, but then he was fine, and now he sees him around the property. He also sees a girl that was playing outside and had to lay down, but she didn't fall, and it was really, really cold, but she couldn't get up, and then she went to sleep and died, and her parents cried a lot, but then she came back, but they still cried because they couldn't see her. Okay, fine, but this is where it got me. When we moved in, he said there's a man in the driveway. I don't see anyone. He said he's right there. He's done this before at the last place, but this time he asked me to close the curtains, and then he's not nice. Today I asked him if he remembered the guy from the driveway that I couldn't see. He said, yes, I didn't like him, he was not nice. I asked him why he wasn't nice, and he said not nice, thanks. I asked him to tell me more. He said it's not safe for mamas and daughters to drive anymore. That's what he was saying right there in the property with his car. I didn't like that. The crazy part is that there's a cross on my neighbor's land beside ours. A young man crashed his car into a metal arch that used to be cemented at the road, flipped and landed on their land. The bent arch remains on our property because it's too big and heavy to move. But it sounds low, the arch isn't all that's here with us. We never watch scary ghost stuff, BC, I don't like it. I've had dreams of people who have passed trying to speak to me since I was a kid and try to suppress it, so I have not encouraged it. Believe and don't shame him. Get advice from mediums because this is above both your and my pay grade. My heart goes out to you as mama. It reminds me of a friend of mine that never wanted to deal with being SAED until her son was. She marched herself down to the therapist because she knew she couldn't help her son till she helped herself. Moms do the hard things. I promise I do believe and don't shame. When he tells me about the nice one, I treat it as if it's a new human friend. If they are unkind, we speak about how it made us feel and how to deal with it. I totally believe you. Thank you. I'll elaborate on me. I've tried to ignore the dreams most of my life, but enjoyed some benefits to being told things ahead of time. And gotta say last goodbyes to family that came to tell me they were leaving and tell family. And have myself reached out to mediums to deal with my stuff. I just didn't tell my kids about it, BC. It didn't seem necessary until he started seeing them. The really naughty ones we practice together to tell them they cannot stay and we cannot help them. Sometimes I tell myself we are nuts and it's all pretend, but never him, and I totally support him. If he wants to be open to them later in life, that's his choice, but he's a very little boy right now, and I don't want them asking, or the bad ones demanding his help. I do not allow that in my house. I've spoken to mediums. We are both in therapy where my guy 100% believes and his doctor accepts that it's his truth, BC. His stories remain consistent like the truth would. It's a big effing journey to be on, because half the people think you're insane, the other half think you're a witch. I was that kid that saw spirits too. Still do, actually. My mom was great and made sure that I was never scared and normalized it for me. She simply told me that people in spirit come to check on us and warn us, and some are just here just to visit the areas that they love, etc. She would always ask me to look at their feet and describe the shoes if I could see them. And then a conversation would go on from there. Sometimes they would be in the room with us while this was happening. And now she ohms and visits me from time to time. Many people in my family have different spiritual gifts. Normalize it as much as you can. Would you be willing to come on my podcast? It's called Beyond the Woodline. I'd love to have you share them. My audience would too. Let me know what you think. Looking forward to hearing from you, slightly smiling face. Would love a link to your podcast. Smiling face. Here you go. https://open.spotify.com/show/2vdq5dfbc0co1 no question mark c equals gdnsxcftqr6lu. Absolutely. Feel free to DM me. I had only read the title and thought you had a way older son who was potentially dating a ghost. Haha, oh no, I see how it can read that way now. I'm sorry about that. How old is your son? It's really common for kids to do this and then seem to grow out of it. Anecdotally, no stats, just personal experience. Seems to peak about 3 years old. He's 6 now, but it was most intense when he was 3 to 5. The one girl that fell asleep outside, he still talks about, but much less showing up regularly. That's so wild. Do you know any history of the area with a young girl dying? I don't, but it was listed at realtor sites as built around 1932, but when renovating they found a post carved with the year. I forget what it was, but it was like 1819 or something. I spoke to a neighbor and he said that he looked up the history of his house, and in 1819 his house was built, and that's because the children were grown that came up in my house, and so they built them houses on the property. My house was the main house, and he said if those kids were, let's say, 18 or so when they moved out, my house would be at least that old, so it could have been built in the 1700s. I really want to go to the town records building to find detailed info on the house, but I'm a mom of 2 little kids and no help. I can't bring them and get stuff done in a public place. I did find an old photo of a family in front of my house, our house with no date, but it's really old. They look nice though they have no kids in the photo. Had a guy decide to run from the cops about 15 years ago on his motorcycle, and he ended up flying into the oak tree on my front lawn. The tree survived the impact. He ended up all over my lawn. The memorial crosses were around for about a decade. Then they stopped. The neighbor kid used to talk about seeing a young man with a motorcycle helmet sitting under my tree. Never saw anything, but I told the ghost guy to get lost. Go home or go to the cemetery. Kid never talked about him again. That's kind of mean you told him to get lost. Maybe he was lost and afraid, or maybe you encouraged him to move on. I did encourage him to move on, but out of my yard. Dude was high, drunk, running from the cops, and nearly crashed into my home. Not only that, I had to clean up the mess he and the paramedics made on my yard because the city, county, and his family failed to do so. I was finding hair, teeth, and tissue around my yard and porch for years. During the first summer, it stunk up the neighborhood, and his ghost or whatever was freaking out the kid. Nope, he can go straight to hell for all I care, or he can go home or the graveyard. Nothing mean about it. I am not his mom. Great story. I've had experiences with shadow people. It's not something I've sought for, but unknown phenomena exist. Thankfully, I have a channel where I get to tell stories in every mysterious kind. It's great to talk about it, and for readers and listeners alike to hear true experiences all around the world. Oh, you have a medium on your hands. Might be a good idea to both learn meditation. I'm told that would help with development. Obviously, both of you have abilities. I'd research the land and see how many owners have lived there and the history of the land. I'm a medium, and he's definitely got gifts. I would talk to every medium, clairvoyant, etc. How would one go about finding them? Do y'all have like a FB group or something? BC, that would be awesome. The ghost he's seeing could be from the accident or somewhere else. Ghosts are very common. He's probably attracted to your home because he knows your son is sensitive. Sir, what are you trying to say here? The bent arch remains on our property because it's too big and heavy to move. But it sounds low. The arch isn't all that's here with us. Like, I think the guy that died here is still here, his spirit is. What rubbish, expressionless.